Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Ashley, today we're going to talk about social pressures and anxiety. So, what we got a few emails requesting that we talk about a little more about mental illnesses and the difficulties we run into finding treatments and
resources
and just in general some of the experiences that we have. And well, I have anxiety, so I can speak on those issues because I can speak on the issues that I have with anxiety.
I mean, I have never been diagnosed with any mental health
Well, I think we all
issues,
have a little
but
bit of
I can
anxiety.
self-diagnose.
Right. Well, I mean,
I have a Google machine.
I did look it up, and like 1 in 3 American adults have some sort of anxiety or will have some sort of anxiety issues in their lifetime. And so just a quick Google search gave me those answers. And since we got a couple emails requesting that we talk a little bit more about our mental health struggles and challenges and triumphs and stuff like that. Since we did get a couple emails about that, I wanted to I had an idea of that we could do every once in a while on a Monday. We could do mental health Mondays. And so that's what today is, like our first mental health Monday. I don't know if it'll be like once a month or if it's something that we'll just kind of have to figure that out, because we didn't plan too much on this one because it was like we got a few emails all at once.
Yeah.
And we thought,
I
well,
was like, let's try this out.
let's make this a priority and kind of make it happen. So this is actually also one of the most raw shows that you guys are going to get because it's 10 p.m. the night before we release. So we have a couple shows ready to go and ready to publish. But since we got those couple emails, I wanted to kind of come up with something and work on the fly today.
Yeah. Usually we would, if anything, we would get up early Sunday morning and record, but I overslept. And then when I realized I overslept, my back hurt. I didn't want to get out of bed. I kept falling
Yeah.
back asleep. Everybody was extremely tired, even the cat.
Yeah, we were it was a rough night. I mean, it's been a rough couple days weather-wise. I have my own anxieties about that. But I wanted to talk today about social pressures and anxiety, specifically those two together, because like I have a lot of social anxieties, and the way I overcome those is to be social
Yeah.
and just let my freak flag fly, just kind of be my weird little self.
Well, because you're very extroverted. Like you're extroverted
I'm an
introvert.
yeah, I'm an-
However they say it. Yeah.
So I think you said it right. I was going to say it the opposite way, but I think you said it right. I'm an extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
And what that means, I guess, is I like being alone. I like my alone time, but I also like people, if that makes sense. I like being around people, but once I've had my limit, I want to be by myself. And, I deal with that. And it's really strange how I deal with a lot of my social anxieties because one of the things recently that I had pop up was I didn't want to go to a bar to go to work. And what I mean by work is the podcast is I was getting a guest for the podcast and going down and showing support for him so he can come up and show support for us. I didn't want to go. And it wasn't really necessarily because I didn't want to go. I was tired. I hadn't saw you very much, and it was end of the week, and it was, I'd had enough, and to go to a bar and try to enjoy myself and at the same time while feeling guilty because I'm there and trying to have fun and cut loose and try to stay awake at the same
And
time.
then you're like, oh, it's the middle of the week. Like, what am I doing on a Tuesday night, at
I
the
think
bar?
it was a Thursday. Yeah, I
Because
mean,
that's how I would think. I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to stay home.
and it's not has anything to do with the guys I went and saw. It's a great bunch of great group of guys. It's just that, man, I was tired, and when I'm tired, I don't really want to be around anybody, and I don't feel like I can be my best self anyway when I'm like that. But I always say, like, I have to force a smile and go do things that I don't want to do, and it wasn't really like that. I did kind of have to force a smile and go, but as soon as I saw my buddy, it was like immediately I
Something
felt
clicked.
better, and I was like, yeah, let's go. And then when I went down there, when we actually got down there, and I loosened up, and I became myself, and it was easy to make that transformation in the moment because of the people I was with.
Yeah.
Do you ever
Like-
have those situations where you like the social situations that, so do you, I guess I'm trying to figure out a way to word this to where, do you have social pressures that you deal with?
I mean,
Like, for instance, at work?
yeah. So like there was a situation at work where I was asked if I wanted to go to like a Royals game with somebody that I don't
Yeah.
know, just like for a business thing. And I'm just like, like, yeah, I would love to go to a Royals game if I was going with the right people, but to go with somebody I don't know and then have to like think about making conversation on the way down there, make conversation when I'm there, like,
And what do we talk about? What if this person doesn't enjoy my company?
yeah. And like that person, like now that I know them, like we have nothing in common.
Right. So like you're going to go down and sit 2.5 hours with a person that,
Yeah.
know, like, because I know how you are when I go to games with you. You're very animated and into the game. And so like having somebody there that might want to conversate with you would just detract away from the game
Yeah.
and the fun.
Like I would constantly be thinking about that the entire time instead of paying attention to the game. And I mean, even at work, I think like I like people and like talking to people, and the people I work with I talk to every day, so like I can talk to them. And I have to interview people and all that good stuff and talk to people, but I people so much in the 8 hours that I'm at work that I don't want to people
Yeah, so
when I'm not at
you're-
work. So I'm like, I'm not going to the grocery store. I'm not going to the like I'm not going anywhere because I just want to go home and not have to see
And so you're
people.
kind of the opposite of me. You're more of a extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
And
Introverted extrovert.
no, you're an extroverted introvert. You want to be introverted, but you're forced to be extrovert.
Yeah.
It's kind of confusing.
Yeah.
But it's basically the opposite of the issues that I have. And so how do you deal with those situations when you have those issues?
Like I just have to stuff everything down inside
So there's no,
until like I can see you and tell you all about it.
so there's no real, so that may be something that you may need to like kind of figure it out, an outlet to deal with that, because like the way I deal with it is I just force myself into a lot of situations a lot of the times. Like, so I like to be a man of my word. And so that's one of the social pressures that I deal with is if I've told somebody I will do something and then the moment comes and I don't want to do it, I make myself do it anyway. And that's what essentially happened with the bar is I
Well-
committed myself to it. And then the day came and I'm like, God, I don't want to go.
Well, and like with me, like I'm really good at encouraging people to do things like outside their comfort zone.
Right. And
It's me. It's like, so this one day, me and a coworker had to get up and talk in front of a bunch of students about our career and how we got to where we are. And she was like, just like, oh my God, I'm going to pass out. Like my armpits are sweating. Like she was freaking out. And I'm like, well, I can't freak out because if we're both up there freaking out, like, and I'm like, oh, you're going to be fine. Like it's going to be great, And so like I get up there and talk and, she gets up there and she's like just blowing it out of the water. And I was like, now see, like you got yourself all psyched up for nothing. And here I am like, oh my God, like I talk in front of a bunch of kids. Like I know none of them know me, but that's I don't know them, so it's harder to talk in front of them when, I don't know somebody. So
For me, it's hard to talk in front of people sometimes. Like I'm pretty articulate most of the time until I'm getting nervous, and then I sound like an idiot.
Yeah.
And like I can see it. Like there was one specific podcast we had not too long ago where we had a guest, and I was kind of stuttering through the first part of it because I was nervous, and I could tell, and it was like, oh, like how do I get myself out of that? And that's kind of one of the social pressures that I was talking about when I wanted to do this show is some of the things that we don't do because we feel pressure from society or our social circles, some of the things we may not do that we should do. And like sometimes speaking your mind, sometimes, and I say this all the time just because it's a difficult conversation to have doesn't mean it, doesn't mean it doesn't need to be had,
Yeah.
One of those things is, it's very anxiety inducing, having
Yeah.
those difficult conversations sometimes. And sometimes I get worked up just thinking about those conversations that need to be had.
Well, and like me, like if I'm going to talk to somebody about something, I tend to talk super fast.
Right.
And so then I'm like, afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. Like I just talked really, really fast and I could see their head just spinning like, oh my gosh, what was she even saying? But that's what I get for like not saying what I want to say. When it's the time to say it, I just
Right.
like keep it all and I'm like going to save this for this one time and then I'm just going to let it all out. And
Well, that's, with the podcast, sometimes like I get anxious about, like I censor myself so much that it makes me sound kind of dumb. And whereas if I just let it go, we can edit it later.
Yeah.
It's not like we can't edit it, but
yeah,
it's really difficult to do sometimes, to think about in the back of your mind, just let it go, just let it flow when, you're trying to be careful of things that you might say that might make you sound silly, or something that you might say that might anger somebody. And at this point in the game, I don't really care anymore. It's all about us and what we want to do. And the show is, we're going to put out a good product regardless of who's watching. So it is what it is.
well, and I get anxiety from thinking about conversations that I've already had. Like, oh, like why didn't I say that, or why didn't I say
Yeah.
this? And then like I'll think about it, and like,
Especially if the conversation didn't go your way.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I
like,
do the
"Man,
same
I
thing.
should have told him this, or I should have said that. Why didn't I say that?
Yeah, it's those social pressures that make us feel that way, I think. And like my way of dealing with that stuff is completely different than a lot of people that I know. Is I force myself to be uncomfortable a lot.
Yeah,
And that might not be the best idea for everybody because it's sometimes crippling, but I just have to push through it. And like, well, a good example would be the bar. It's recent. I can remember it, and it's right there. So
Yeah.
I'll bring that up and I'll use that a lot for this social aspect of it, because I didn't want to be around anybody that night. And once I allowed myself to let go, the thought was I was there for the podcast and I was doing it for business and I was going to work. But then I thought, when my buddy got here, I was like, man, I'm going to have a lot of fun with this. I'm just going to go. We're going to have fun.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. And if nothing comes out of it for the show, nothing comes out of it. I'm just going to go have fun.
yeah,
And I think a lot of, like, I've been asked to go to games myself and I've turned it down because of like my size in the past. Like being a big old 500-pound dude, I couldn't sit next to anybody
Yeah.
without making them uncomfortable, which in turn made me uncomfortable. I could squeeze my fat ass into anything. So it's really funny how big old fat guy could fit into some small spaces, but I didn't want to make anybody else uncomfortable. And not only that, was walking to get up there,
Oh,
the
yeah.
breathing and thinking about how I might appear to other people was just anxiety inducing. So that made me not go a lot. And then once I had the weight loss surgery, I was able to go to things, and now I don't want to sit around the house anymore. I don't want to just sit around and waste my life away. So
Yeah.
I tend to get into situations where I might feel anxious
Thought
about
process.
process of, you know, making myself uncomfortable in the beginning was just getting out and doing things and making myself uncomfortable for the good, for the betterment of myself in the end. And it ended up making that anxiety just go away. And I don't really have many social anxieties that I can't deal with now, other than saying no when I don't want to, or I have an issue with saying no when I don't have a reason to say no.
Yeah.
Like, people call me and they'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Nothing." And then I use this example a lot. They'll be like, "What are you doing?" And I'll be like, "Nothing, just hanging out. What are you doing?" What are you doing? And they'll be like, "Oh, great. Then you can come help me." No, that's not what I said. I said, I'm going to, you know, and my daughter just posted a meme the other day and made me think of this. You know, I'm doing nothing, or maybe she sent it to me in a text. I can't remember. But it was the scenario like that. And it was, no, I meant I'm going to continue doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I do have a problem when I don't have a reason to say no, of saying no, because
Yeah.
it's, I don't want to be a dickhead. And
Yeah.
it's like, how do you say no in a nice way when you don't really want it? Like, I don't have a reason to say no other than I just don't want to do it.
Yeah. I mean, because there's some days where I just don't do anything. Like I just want to sit on my love seat and
Play with the
Watch.
phone and
watch my shows or
Yeah.
whatever and not do anything.
yeah.
Like-
Well, even on those days, it's not like you can't just, it's not like you can just stop and do nothing, because you got the kids to take care of, you know, you got laundry to fold or dishes to wash. So it's not like, you know, you taking a break away from everybody. You get to take a break away from everybody. It's not the same.
No. Maybe next year when both kids are in school, I'll have to take a mental health day during the middle of the week.
Well, and even then, when you do that, we'll be working on the podcast. We'll make that one of our mental health Mondays, you know, and but maybe do something live.
That's not the plan I had.
No. It's social pressures there.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about that because I feel like that's something that we've dealt with recently, and it's something that everybody deals with, is social pressures and anxiety with those social pressures and societal pressures. Like right now, you know, like the country on the internet is divided. You know, there's a lot of division on the internet. I see it a lot on the internet. I don't see it a whole lot in real life. You know, if I take a walk in the grocery store, you know, and everybody's like, "Hey, how you doing?" You know,
Yeah.
and just going on about their day. They're not worried about who's voting for who or who's taking what shots and who's covering their. It's, man, we're not as divided as a people as we think we are, and I think the social media really exacerbates that. And I think social media plays a big part in anxieties,
Oh, for sure.
people's anxieties these days.
Well, especially like, you know, just people see like, you know, take TikTok or whatever, and people, or shorts, and people see people live in a certain way, and
Yeah,
they're trying to do those same things.
right.
You know, or like our parent caregiver trainer was talking about how, like, you know, more people diagnose themselves with autism because of a TikTok they seen. Like,
Right.
now everybody has the tism, he said.
Yeah, and that's,
so
I've noticed that a lot more. Like, hey, I mean, I know people are like embracing it and everything, but like, come on, you know, I see that a lot with. It's a social contagion, like getting people like in an echo chamber. And what are we going to do about that? That's a whole different anxiety inducing thing, like talking about the future in 5 years. Where are we going to be as a people? You know, are we still going to be, you know, doing this on the internet? Are we still going to be, you know, our lights going to work?
Yeah.
You know, stuff like that. Like, that's very, seeing the news, you know, and looking at social media, you'd think the country was dying, but you take a walk outside your front door and you talk to people, and it's not like that at all. So I encourage everyone to do that. Like, if you're feeling anxious about the way things are going, just go out there and talk to somebody, or, like reach out to somebody that's looking like they're not doing as well. It might make you feel better about how your life's. That's kind of how I do things sometimes when I'm feeling bad about my life. I just think about people who are less fortunate than I am. And I think about, man, I'm lucky to be where I'm at. I'm lucky to have the problems that I have instead of those problems.
And you asked me to drive you down to 8th Street. Huh?
Yeah, drive me down to the homeless shelter and help me feel better. Because, there's some truth to that. It sounds like asshole-ish to say, but, hey, drive me down by the homeless people so I can feel better about my life. But there is a little bit of truth to that. Like, we need to look at what we have instead of looking at what we want.
Yeah.
Like we could all be in worse spots. Even the homeless, there's worse spots that they could be too. They could be homeless in another country, At least this one, the homeless people could find something to eat. They don't have to steal it. People throw shit away here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this is a land of the waste for real, but
Yeah.
I know this hasn't been the best, mental health Monday really, because we don't really
It's
have
just
any
a start.
Yeah, we don't really have any stats or learning points here. It's just kind of talking about some of the struggles that we've had and some of the things that we see recently. So it may be a short one today, but it's because it's 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night, and we've got to get this published for tomorrow. And the reason why I wanted to get it going right now is because I want to make sure that everybody knows on the email that, hey, we hear you and we want to absolutely interact with you guys. And if you have any ideas on what you'd like us to speak about, some of the issues that we deal with, our sons have ADHD. We have one son with autism. I deal with ADHD myself, and I have anxiety. Ashley doesn't have any diagnosed mental health disorders, but she lives with a bunch of messed up people, like we all have.
I have a long family history, if that, that helps.
And you have dealt with that, dealt with mental illnesses your whole life with the people that are closest to you. And so you have a lot of experience with it,
Yeah.
maybe not having mental health issues yourself, but you're here with us every day. So, that's something. You're in the crazy house with the crazies.
It's all right. I'm just, I just don't know what we would do if we threw a girl into the mix, like a teenage girl,
That'd be rough.
Boy.
I remember, having when Ashlyn was a teenage girl and she didn't live here, and the attitudes sometimes it was like, oh man, I know you're a girl and I know you're young. It's very hard to explain to your children sometimes when they don't see the world the way you do, like, hey, you'll get it eventually. I know that things aren't easy right now, but they do get better. And that was a lie. That was a damn lie. I'm sorry. Things, the way things get better is you have more control over your happiness.
Yeah.
As an adult than you do as a child. You have more, like, you don't have all the control, everybody likes to say you have control over your own happiness, but some things are out of your control too.
I do tell Sully a lot, like, hey, if you would just do your homework at school when you're supposed to do it, you'd be a lot happier. Yeah. Things would be a lot easier for you.
I agree.
So,
but
in that aspect, he chooses his happiness.
And it does take sometimes learning those lessons by ourselves. Sometimes we have to learn those difficult lessons without, sometimes you can ask for all the help in the world, but it takes that experience to really get to see to understand those type of things. And when you have social pressures as a child, it's completely different. You know, when we were growing up, the social pressures that we had could disappear at the end of the day. Nowadays, these kids got their phones that they're attached to. Now, our child doesn't have a phone anymore, but it was because he let those social pressures get to him, and ultimately at the end of the day it was unhealthy. So we saw that, and we decided to take the executive decision to take that away and wait till you get older to deal with those things. But how many social pressures as a child did you deal with that maybe weren't addressed in the correct way, or maybe you shouldn't have been in those social situations?
I don't
Countless
know.
for me. Countless.
Like,
I mean, there was a lot of stupid shit that I did just because I was going along with the flow, you know?
yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. I was a pretty good kid, except, like, I did my fair share of,
I think,
teenage drinking and cornfields, running from the police, but
that
on
wasn't-
foot, not in a car.
but that's not out of the ordinary for where we are. It's rural America where you came from, which is just 2 miles down the road, but it's still rural America. It's different because like that's all you had to do.
Yeah, there's nothing.
There wasn't any parking lots you could hang out in, so you guys chose cornfields.
And like
not
everybody
cornfields, but
knows
fields.
everybody. And, at the time when like this situation happened to me, I thought, man, like, am I the only kid this happens to, but then like now that I'm an adult, I discover like, no, this is like a rite of passage, like running through a field from the cops after a night of drinking,
I mean, I think anybody in a small town like from Pennsylvania to Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's I think all small towns are kind of like that. It's just you don't have anything to do but get together and raise hell together.
Yeah.
And I mean, you guys really weren't hurting anybody but each other, so, it is what it is. We all do stupid shit when we're younger, and we all have attitudes about stupid shit that we shouldn't. And I do, looking back on things when I was a kid and had those attitudes with my mother, about certain things, I do get them now. I understand why she was so hard on me, and I put her through a lot of hell. But, before she passed away, we did have those long conversations where I apologized to her, and she's like, hey, you're gonna experience it, and I didn't experience it near as bad as what she did, but I'm going through the ringer right now with my own kids.
Well, and like me, I think I'm like the opposite. Like I think about like how complacent my parents were, like, like, well, and like my parents were together when my whole childhood,
Right.
up until I was 18. But like, they were just like, as long as Ashley's, got good grades and not causing any trouble, we're not going to worry about her.
Right. And so you and your brother were actually pretty well behaved, I'm sure.
I mean, my brother got in lots of trouble, but
but there wasn't
he only
too
went
much
to jail once.
Yeah, there wasn't too much trouble to be had, though, for real. I heard about like your guys' difficulties growing up. I'm like, shit, like by the time I was 16, I'd already been in a bar fight and stabbed. It's a whole lot different growing up in the city.
Yeah.
I mean, there wasn't nothing left for us to do but hang out with each other at dangerous places. So, I mean, those were the social pressures that I grew up with. And the kids today are so fucking mean to each other. It's so ridiculous. I don't even know what to say about it sometimes. I hear some of the stories from my niece, my nieces growing up, when they, some of the things that they went through. And then my daughter growing up in a small town school. It was difficult to hear those type of things because I'm like, man, why are you guys so fucking mean to each other? Because it's all you guys got. You're all you have is each other. So why are you doing this to each other?
Yeah.
I just, I felt a certain way about it. And
Kids are mean, but it's our parents' job to
toughen them up a little bit, you know, and not only toughen them up a little bit, but just
But teach your kids to
learn,
be kind,
right? Learn.
and have empathy.
I almost said learn them, but teach them how to be nice to one another and think about the person across from them as a human.
Yeah, like
Because-
I remember when Sully was little, me always telling him like, you know, it's not okay to stare at people, but it's okay to ask questions.
Absolutely, and that's
So-
hey man, I learned that from disabled people telling me, hey, you know, I see you looking at me, and I see you looking. Do you have questions? And I learned this at an early age. Do you have questions that you want to ask? You know, and so I'd ask those questions, and they'd tell me, you know, hey, just, you know, instead of staring, just ask. You know, and you might upset someone, but you're more likely to upset them by staring and asking
Yeah.
those questions in your head than verbalizing.
Yeah.
And asking those questions that way. Like, for example, I had a friend growing up had didn't have an arm. He only had half an arm. It was missing from the elbow down. And I asked, you know, straight up, hey man, what happened to your arm? And he lied to me naturally. He said a shark bit it off, but you know, that wasn't true at all. And I knew it wasn't true when he told me, but he was born that way. And
Yeah.
it's essentially, you know, and so we had a whole conversation about like how he adapted growing up and stuff, and
Yeah.
you know what it was like growing up without an arm, and that's how I learned that, you know, people that grow up that way or that were born that way don't know how to explain it because they don't know any other way.
Yeah.
They don't know how to explain what it's like with two arms.
Right.
So, you know, it's like a blind person that's never saw, you know, they were born blind. They don't have that reference point to be able to tell you what it's like to be blind.
Yeah. Or somebody that was born deaf, you know.
Right. Exactly. And so this conversation I think is pretty good for a first mental health Monday. But the next mental health Monday, I'm going to try to get a professional on to talk with me, preferably here in studio, but we'll do it via Zoom if we need to. And I think we can do two of us talking to we can have like 99 people on Zoom. So, you know, that'd be kind of interesting. But I really wanted to, I'm really glad we got those emails asking us to discuss these things, and because I think it does help me a little bit also to talk about these issues when I'm having them. And if I'm having a particularly rough day, I think it'd be a good time to come in and record a Mental Health Monday and have that stuck back in the bank, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean, for
The Mental Health Monday file.
yeah, and we might do, you know, periodically throughout the week or whatever, and we might throw out a mental health minute or whatever, you know, and have it as a short or whatever. But that's not the total direction I wanted to go with the show. I wanted Coffee with Bearded Bad Dad to be like an all-encompassing podcast where eventually I'd like to take it daily. I'd like to do this as a daily show as time allows, and the more we get into doing things, we'll be able to do a block recording. Like we might be able to do 5 interviews in one weekend, and you know that.
Yeah.
Throw them out all in 5 days or whatever, and eventually we'll have enough material to do that, enough planning to be able to do that, and enough money. Because right now I really need another camera. I really need another a different interface for our sound here. I want to get bigger so we could do more than 2 people at a time.
Yeah.
So, because I'd like to bring in more people. I know a good guest to have on for multiple people would be Jessica or Jessica and Sean. I think if it was all of us together, we could maybe get Sean in on it.
Get him to talk.
Right. But this has been fun for a first show. I'm a little nervous and a little rambly, so we're going to end it here. And remember, hey, we've got that email on our YouTube channel, and hey, right now we'll go ahead and link that in the description of this podcast, our email for the show, and we'll also flash it up on the screen for you guys so you can see that email. If you want to get in touch with us, or if you don't want to ask us to talk about a certain topic, if you just want to say hi, or if you just want to be mean, shoot us an email. I like hate mail too. So with that, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.